excellent.
Today, we're going to tackle something that most leaders, well, they think they know. It's something that they assume is healthy, but something that is really never measured. And I'm talking about our company culture. See, culture is rarely what our leadership says that it is. Culture is really what employees whisper about in the parking lot. It's what they text their spouse about in the middle of the day. Culture is what people say about your company when the boss is not around. And here's the truth. Most leaders believe that their culture is healthy. They wrote good values. They did an engagement survey, or they put those inspirational values or sayings on a wall. And there's nothing wrong with that. But values on a wall, that's not culture. The behaviors in the hallway, that's your culture. And if you've never audited your culture, you may not even know what it is. So in this episode, we'll walk through the 5 practical tests of culture. We'll talk about how to audit your culture so you can see it clearly, and how to identify the gaps between what leadership thinks that it is and what employees actually experience. So welcome to the Mind Your Business podcast, the podcast for whatever business is on your mind. Let's get started.
Well, that's excellent.
Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Mind Your Business podcast. If this brings value to your life, hit like so that YouTube will know, subscribe so that you can join the conversation, and share it with a friend so that they can join us. And of course, if you're listening from wherever you get your favorite podcast, please leave a review. This helps me add as much value to as many people as possible. So let's start our conversation with an obvious question. Is your company culture healthy? Is your organizational culture healthy? And in my experience, when I ask this question, it gets answered typically quickly. I hear answers like, our culture is great, or our people love working here. We have really strong values. But it's my follow-up question, the one that comes next, where things start to slow down a little bit. The question is only 4 simple words. It's one phrase, and here it is. How do you know? Simple enough, right? How do you know that it's healthy? Did someone measure it? Did someone audit it? Or are we just assuming? See, this is a powerful question for you to consider because most organizations measure almost everything except the one thing that shapes everything else. Think about it. We measure revenue, we measure productivity, we measure performance, but culture rarely makes that list. Instead, it's just left up to interpretation. And the obvious problem is that interpretation is not a reliable leadership strategy. Some quick research proves this to be true as well. Gallup consistently shows that only about 1/3 of employees say they even feel engaged at work. So that means that the majority of people aren't really giving their best effort on the job. They don't enjoy what they do, and they don't enjoy where they do it. So if this is consistently true in the majority, why is there such a gap in the interpretation between leadership and employees? And here's the answer. It's that they're experiencing 2 different cultures. See, in many cases, the leaders experience the culture from the conference room, and then the employees, they experience the culture from the very front lines. And I'm telling you, those are 2 very different experiences. This is why great organizations treat culture the same way they treat strategy or finances. They audit that. Think about it this way. No responsible organization would ever say, well, we think the finances, they're probably fine. Of course we wouldn't. They run audits. They have checks and they have balances. And they look for blind spots. And I believe that culture deserves the same level of attention. And I want to give you a simple framework that I think is going to help you do that. 5 ways to audit your culture. These are 5 tests that can show you what your team is actually experiencing, not just what we think, but what's real. So let's start with number 1. I'm talking about the parking lot test. The parking lot test. Think of the parking lot test like being able to hear what's being said in the parking lot, away from the leadership. It's the raw responses to what's happening on the inside. Because we all know that the most honest version of your culture is what happens when leadership's not around. And I said it a moment ago, but every organization has 2 versions of its culture. You have the official culture, and you have the experienced culture. And it's different. The official culture is what leadership communicates. It's the values on the wall. It's the language that's used in the meetings. It's the culture leaders believe that they're building. You know, what's written in the onboarding manual. But the experienced culture, that's what employees actually feel on a daily basis. This is your reality. Doesn't matter what was written, what they experience is the reality. It's found in private conversations between coworkers. It's found in how people talk about the leadership when the leadership's not around. If employees talk about leadership with respect or trust or appreciation, and they have confidence in who's leading them, that's usually a sign of a healthy culture. Oh, but if it's cynical, if it's disrespectful or sarcastic or frustrated, that's a good indication that there's a gap in what's perceived culture and what is experienced culture. Now, I realize, obviously, you can't stand in the parking lot and eavesdrop on conversations. I think about Michael Scott in an episode of The Office. You can't do that. But you can bring the parking lot talk inside. So let me give you just 3 simple ways that you can do this. Let me make it practical. First, ask the employees that you trust some honest questions. Find 2 or 3 team members who are respected by other employees and just ask them, what do people say about our culture when leadership's not around? It's a very simple question, but if you trust them to give you honest feedback and they're respected by other team players, well, then they're going to give you an indication of what other people are feeling. Or you could ask, what are the conversations that happen after our meetings that we probably don't hear about, but we really need to hear about? And then just listen for common complaints. Listen for things that are repeated. Those are often indicators of problems or pain points within your team. And if multiple people mention the same frustrations, the same confusion, or the same concerns, lean into it. And then be helpful. Don't be hurtful. See, if employees believe that being honest creates problems, they're never going to be honest. But if they know you care, if they know that you're trying to be helpful, you're trying to do the right thing, they're going to be confident enough to share. The goal of the parking lot test is, ultimately it's simple. It's to help the leaders understand the difference between the culture they believe they have and the culture that employees know that they have. So bring the parking lot conversations, the ones that you're not a part of, bring them inside and get involved. The second audit here is the meeting test. If you really want to understand your culture, watch what happens in meetings. Just be observant. Meetings are where culture becomes visible. You can see who speaks, and then you can see who stays quiet. You can see whether ideas are welcomed, or if they're ignored, or they're dismissed. See, meetings, I think about it like a live demonstration of how your culture actually works. Google is a great case for this. Many years ago, they launched an internal research study called Project Aristotle. And their goal was to learn what makes some teams successful and then some teams struggle. They studied more than 180 teams, and they looked at everything from personality types, educational backgrounds, to different work styles. And at first, they assumed what most of us probably would, that the best teams would have the best people, right? The smartest people or the most talented. But the research actually found something different. They found that who was on the team mattered less than how the team interacted. Think about that. Who was on the team mattered less than how the team interacted together. In other words, the cultural norms of the team mattered more than the talent of the team. Not only was culture the most important factor, more specifically something called psychological safety. And that means people feel safe. Simple enough, right? It means they feel safe to share their ideas, safe to admit that they made a mistake. They felt safe to ask questions. They had this culture of safety where it opened them up to be able to express, to learn, and to grow. And they found that when this safety existed, people worked better together. They were more creative. Their teams performed better. They were just all around healthier. But if you take the safety away, even the most talented teams, they're going to hold back, and the entire organization, you guessed it, it suffers. That's why the meeting test is important here, because it's one of the easiest places to see if psychological safety is present in your culture. So let me offer, again, I love practical tips here. Let me give you a simple way that you can use this in your next meeting. So I would say for the next 3 meetings, do this. Intentionally observe the conversations as if you were studying the culture of the room. Just during those meetings, pay attention to 3 different things. First, who participates? How many people actually contribute to the conversation? If 10 people are present, but only 2 or 3 people are dominating the conversation or the meeting, that indicates that those other people, well, they don't feel comfortable speaking up for whatever reason. So pay attention to who's talking. Secondly, notice how ideas are received when somebody brings something to the table. So when someone shares an idea, does the team engage with it? Do others ask questions? Do they build on it? Or does the conversation quickly move on without much acknowledgement? And then third, watch what happens when somebody disagrees. Disagreement is one of the clear signs of safety that we're looking for. Because when someone challenges a proposal or offers a different perspective, just watch how the room responds. If people seem nervous, if they're worried, or do people feel safe enough to disagree? To say, I don't think that's the best idea. I appreciate you bringing that. It's a great thought, but in our context, maybe we should do this. See, the disagreement is healthy. See, we often think that disagreement is pushback, but actually, it's just people caring about what they do. A lack of disagreement, that's the red flag. So after a few meetings, then just step back and ask yourself one simple question. Did the meeting feel like a conversation? Or did it feel like a presentation? And man, that will really give you clarity on the health of your culture and how safe people feel. If the meeting feels like a conversation, then everyone is engaged. If it feels like a presentation, then you've got a lot of people that don't feel safe enough to speak up and participate. And if meetings only function like presentations where the leadership speaks and everybody else just listens, that's going to tell you something important about your culture. Because culture is not just revealed or presented by what people say, but it's by who it is that's saying it. And then number 3, here's your third audit, the mistake test. This is a good one. Every organization talks about learning, right? We talk about growth, we talk about innovation, we talk about stretching and getting better in every way. But the real question is what happens when someone actually gets something wrong? Because growth, innovation, challenge, all of that comes with mistakes. And when you have those mistakes, that can show the emotional environment of the workplace faster than really anything else. See, in some organizations, mistakes are treated like a threat. So people they avoid them. They don't take a risk. They don't try to grow. They don't try to do anything cutting edge. And then they deflect responsibility. They avoid it because they know that it carries consequences. But in a healthy culture, mistakes are treated so different. They're acknowledged quickly, they're discussed openly, and most importantly, they become opportunities to improve. They become opportunities to grow rather than to find blame or try to place it on someone to get them in, quote, trouble, right? Ultimately, the mistake test shows whether your culture prioritizes accountability or if it prioritizes blame. So to audit this part of your culture, think back over the last maybe 3 significant mistakes or failures that's happened with your team. And then ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself, was the mistake acknowledged? How did we acknowledge the mistake that happened? Did someone bring it forward straight away? Were they upfront, transparent, or were you made aware only after it became unavoidable? When everything had already burned down, they're bringing you the ashes. Secondly, what was the immediate response from leadership? When someone brought either the mistake to you up front, or if it was in panic mode, did the conversation focus on trying to figure out what happened and then improving the process? Or was it all about placing blame, trying to find who was responsible, the consequence to the person? And then the third, what happened after the mistake was addressed? After the conversation happened, after the response took place, what happened next? Did the team document what they learned? Did they make adjustments? Did they change the procedures, the policies? Or did everyone just move on, try to avoid punishment, just forget it, and we'll just get past this? And see, the patterns that you discover here with these 3 questions in dealing with mistakes, these are indicators of the health of your culture. So if mistakes are communicated quickly, they're discussed openly, well, it's likely you have a culture where people feel safe enough to grow from failure, to make mistakes. But if mistakes are hidden, if they're delayed, if they're avoided, if they're covered up, that's a sign that you need improvement. And the number 4 is the promotion test. Promotions are one of the clearest signals of what behaviors and attitudes are rewarded in an organization. For example, if your culture emphasizes teamwork, and I think most of ours do, we would put a lot of emphasis on saying we want an organization or a culture of teamwork. But if your culture emphasizes teamwork, but only promotes people who work in silos and aren't team players, well, everybody's going to notice that. So if your culture encourages innovation, but promotes those who play it safe and maintain the status quo, well, people are going to pick up on that too. And so the promotion test is simple. Just review the last 10 to 15 promotions in your organization, or all promotions in the last year, maybe if your company is smaller. And then identify the behaviors and the traits that were present in each promoted individual. So did they demonstrate teamwork? Well, if that's a value and they didn't, then why did you promote them? Did they innovate or improve processes? If that's a value and they didn't, they were to the status quo, why did you promote them? Did they represent the company values? Well, if they didn't, why did you promote them? See, people are going to notice these things. Or you could ask this, were promotions based primarily on individual performance, visibility, tenure, or even worse, just some kind of quota? And then compare these traits to your stated values. Now, where there's alignment, congratulations. Your culture is consistent with what you have rewarded. Where there's a gap, you've identified a silent signal that your organization is sending employees about what really matters. And this is a really powerful exercise because I can promise your employees are already aware of these trends. And this is going to help you see them too. And the number 5 is the exit interview test. I think most exit interviews, even if you do those, and I think everyone should, I just think they're treated like a formality. They're just a checkbox to complete before someone leaves the company. But in reality, they're one of the most honest indicators of what your culture really is. One major reason is that an employee leaving the organization, they no longer have fear. There's no consequences. I mean, what does it matter what they say? They're already leaving, so they're going to be more honest about their experiences, about their frustrations, their perceptions of leadership. They're just going to be more transparent. The exit interview test, that can show where the communication breakdowns are, signs of burnout because of workload or expectations. It can show the leadership gaps, misalignments with values, and just probably things about your organization that you're not even thinking about because it's their perspective. Then, when you study this across multiple exit interviews, when you get plenty of data, it exposes the gaps between the culture that you think exists and the culture employees actually experience. And I think exit interviews are even better than surveys or engagement scores because they can be so raw and they can be so real. So let me give you an easy way that you can do this. Collect all the exit interview data that you've got. Like I said, last 10 to 15 employees who've left or all that you can get over the last year. Just collect all of the exit interview information that you can get in your organization. Then look for recurring themes. Don't focus on individual complaints or the individual themselves. Just look at recurring themes. Notice if multiple people are highlighting the same issues. Maybe they say we don't have a growth plan here. There's a lack of growth opportunities, or the communication it's poor, it's horrible, or leadership is just inconsiderate or inconsistent. Look for things that are common. Then take these things that you find and compare them to what you believe the culture is, and then you're going to see the gaps. So you'll see the blind spots that are going to affect retention, engagement, and performance because you have your stated values and then you have your lived experiences. In most organizations, you already have this information. It's just sitting in a file. So this gives you just a quick and easy start, a place that you can begin to start your audit. So this is your challenge. Run your own mini culture audit. Pick one team, pick one department, and then run through the 5 tests that we've talked about today. The parking lot test. Ask a trusted employee, what do people say about our culture when leadership's not in the room? Then the meeting test. Attend a team meeting, observe who speaks, whose ideas are received, how disagreements handled, and then take notes. And then the mistake test. Look at the last several mistakes or failures and evaluate the response. The promotion test. Look at who's getting promoted. The exit interview. Go through all of the data and see if you can find reoccurring themes in what people have said. And then after the audit, ask yourself, what surprised you? What patterns did you see that you didn't expect? And then what does this reveal about the health of your culture? And the benefit is that even a simple audit like this, it'll give you insights that most leaders never get. And the bonus is this: once you see your culture honestly, the real experienced culture, you can make better decisions. You can make better decisions about communication, about leadership behaviors, and employee development. You get the opportunity to make the corrections. I'm so passionate about this. So I put together a free resource to help you. I want you to click the link in the description to download just a free ebook that'll help you implement this very audit. I've taken this whole process and I've put it in a booklet for you. And if you want to take this a step further, I can help you do that. I help organizations with a 3-part process. I do a comprehensive culture assessment, strategy development, and then leadership training. And then I help you implement and give you ongoing support. So you can learn more about that at brandonmatthews.com. And I want to say thanks for tuning in to the Mind Your Business podcast. If you found this episode helpful, hey, hit like so YouTube knows, subscribe so you can join the conversation, and of course, share it with a friend so that they can join us. And if you're listening from wherever you get your favorite podcast, please leave a review. That would be amazing. And until next time, go build a killer culture. And don't forget to mind your business.